And at this time, I'd like to turn this program over to KSA Engineering Representative, Mr. Randy Tuminello, which I learned how to say it correctly at this time, and he will introduce his staff. And I'm telling you, working with these people, they're professional, they're diligent, attention to detail. We appreciate them so much. And right now, Randy, it's your show. Thank you very much for showing up.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. It's such an honor to be here. I'm not one of those singer entertainers that knows exactly how far to put the mic in front of the disc. Somebody, I think, quipped earlier that they thought I had an uncanny likeness to Adele because I had this on. So I'm not doing her justice right now. But anyway, thank you so much. I have to start out and say that it has actually been such an honor for us, KSA and MHS Planning, to be able to be trusted and entrusted to work with you and get engaged with you to develop the strategic and comprehensive plan. Just so fortunate to have Emily Gunderson, who is a part of the planning team, as well as Hunter Rush. Hunter will be speaking in just a few minutes about the comp plan portion of it. I'm going to be focused more on the strategic plan part of it. We also have Lanny Buck here, who is our lead engineer on the project and also the project principal. I'm serving as the project manager and lead strategic plan. So we want to just show you just briefly where we're going with this tonight. Here's the meeting agenda. It's really going to be three major components to it. First of all, as I said, we're going to give you an update on where we're at on the strategic and comprehensive plan. And then right after that update, we're going to take some time to have some questions and answers together and just have some discussion on that. And once that's complete, then we'll go to the second portion of the agenda, which is to talk about some very specific project opportunities. And Stacy Finley is going to lead us in that, as well as then the economics and funding. And Craig Cunningham, who represents D.A. Davidson and Company, is going to be making that presentation because he knows economics and funding inside and out. So we're relying on the professionals here on all of this, but you can see there's a logical flow to everything we're going to do tonight. Sure, you're going to have some questions about economics and funding as well as the projects, and so we've got a second section for Q&A set aside for that as well. And once we finish that, we'll probably be done for the evening then. Okay. So just sort of, again, give you the context a little bit, because there can be a little bit of confusion when we talk about planning. You know, there's so many different elements to planning. And so we want to just tell you that there's a broad range to a very specific range as far as planning is concerned. The strategic plan, which we have just completed, is at the most broad level, and that's the workshop that Chris was talking about a little bit earlier. We'll tell you a little bit more about that process in just a minute. But the strategic plan lays the foundation for the comprehensive plan, and that comprehensive plan is what we're in the works doing right now, and Hunter will give you an update on that part of it. But the comp plan takes the major initiatives expressed in the strategic plan and begins to refine them a little bit more in a broader detail, involving everything from transportation and infrastructure to land use and policy and those kinds of things. And then finally, once the comprehensive plan is in place and you've got a big picture of all of these integrated aspects of your community, then it breaks down into the individual master plans, like an airport master plan or a parks and rec plan. And so those are some of the things that'll be following. We're going to focus tonight on those first two aspects, the strategic plan and the comprehensive plan. All right, so let me give you just a little bit of an overview of this project, this strategic plan and comprehensive plan project. It actually began about November of last year. We started out having one-on-one interviews with 36 various community leaders representing a broad constituency of the city. That was then followed by something we were very, very appreciative of and very excited about, the citizens poll, where we had one of the largest percentages of responses to a citizens poll that we've ever seen. Over 500 responses to the poll. And so once we had that information in place, we were ready for the strategic planning workshop, which again was a part of our engagement strategy. The one-on-one interviews, the poll that we did, and then the workshop. Those were all engagement strategies because we felt it was important for the citizens of this community to determine what the plan was. It was not our responsibility or our place to do the plan. It was our responsibility to draw it out of you and then just help you articulate it and put it into motion. And so the final thing will be due on May the 1st, and that will be the completion of the comprehensive plan. So we wanted to give you this sort of overview and a status update here. Notice again the emphasis on citizen engagement. Let me talk to you a little bit more about what we did there and how it all links to what happened in the strategic plan. Everything that occurred, the one-on-one interviews, as well as the 500 poll responses, those were assimilated and basically synthesized into what we call a current situation analysis. And so that basically told us what your priorities were, what you felt were the greatest needs, and really what the plan should focus on. And so it provided all the planning priorities and basically gave us the roadmap we needed in order to structure the strategic planning workshop. And so we spent the 2 days, and that strategic plan was driven by all of those responses from the public. And it ultimately boiled down, as strategic plans are designed to do, to identify the major objectives and then work the detailed action plans to accomplish those major objectives. We kind of, for fun, called those major objectives big, bold steps. And so out of those planning priorities became the big, bold steps and then the detailed action plans. So the strategic planning process then led to the identification of those 4 major themes: the polling results, the one-on-one interviews. Basically what it all boiled down to was a concern about the city's identity and brand and reputation and maintaining that reputation, that welcome home vision that you have for yourselves. Another important item that came out of the interviews and the poll was governance. And then thirdly, lifestyle amenities, restaurants, retail, housing, the downtown revitalization. All of those things were important amenities that you talked about as being important priorities. And then, of course, infrastructure that supports those amenities. We did hear a few remarks here and there about streets, but so that was a pretty big outcome of it as well. So when we say lifestyle amenities, sometimes the bumps we feel on the road is a pretty big important part about lifestyle. But then obviously funding and economics was also a major theme. Okay, we need all of this stuff and these are important issues. Okay, but how do we pay for it? And so as you can see, it really did, because of your input, pull everything together for us in the strategic planning workshop. And so as I said, that drove the workshop itself. In the first day, we looked at the past, because if you don't look at your past as a community, you may miss a lot of important milestones in your past that still has a lot of impact on what you do in the future. Your roots, your values, your identity, even your personality as a community is rooted in your past. And so it was important, before we took a leap into the future, to make sure that all of those things worth keeping were made a part of the future as well. And then, as I said, we also looked at the current situation based upon the polling results and the one-on-one interviews. From that process, involving 26 people out of the 33 who were originally involved in the one-on-one interviews. The 26 citizens that worked for those 2 days are the ones who actually constructed the strategic plan. And I'm going to introduce 3 of the leaders who were responsible for leading their individual teams. And what we did is, once we had crystallized those 4 major themes based upon the poll results, we basically identified 4 teams to work on one big bold step apiece. So we had one team work on identity and brand. We had one team to work on governance. We had another team working on the economics and funding aspects. And finally, we had a team that worked on the lifestyle amenities. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to David Rose, who actually led 2 teams. We combined 2 teams into one, and he's going to talk about the first 2 major goal steps.
Just hold on to this. So I'm asking to leave this on here before I move through mine. The challenge tonight is, I want you to look at your packet. The packet covers these 4 areas, and they've given me 8 minutes to cover 2 of them. So they know me already. But we're putting you in a box, and you can't get out of the box. And so I'll walk you through the packet in just a minute. But as you saw these key themes, we came up with these 4 big ideas, and as we talked over those couple of days, we came up with really one word for each of those 4, that we wanted to become a place where people could thrive. That would be our identity. That in terms of number 2, governance and the community values, that this would be a people who could be trusted. And so I'm going to talk about those 2 ideas, about how do we become a place where you thrive and a people who can be trusted. And then Jan's going to come, the 3rd idea was using creative and traditional financing options. We want to figure out how do we trigger economic growth. And then Deanna's going to come and share with you this idea of how do we then transform what we have into something better. So those 4 ideas: thriving, trusting, triggering, and transforming. Okay? So if you look in your packet, you will see that page 2 and page 3 cover this first idea of identity and branding. And then page 4 covers governance and administration. So I'm going to walk you through those 3 pages in about 6 minutes. So buckle your seatbelts. And what I will tell you is, I'm not going to read everything that's on there, but I will walk you through to explain the big ideas. And then Jan will come and take you on to page 6, which talks about economics and funding. That's 6 and 7. And then Deanna's going to come and talk about amenities and development on 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so that's your packet. And so you can put these by your bed. I know you want to meditate on these every night before you go to bed and to learn more. But if you'll look there then on page 2, we want to walk through identity and branding. And so what you have looks a little different than this, but the basic idea was we wanted to say, how do we become that place to thrive? And to come up with some programs, some action steps. And so what you'll see there is not just that program, but who's accountable for it, a timetable, when does it start, when does it finish, and what are some milestones. I'm not going to take you through all of those specifics. I want to take you through those programs, and then when we're done, after all of these pieces, if you've got questions, then we'll try to answer as many of them as possible. And so if we want to become this place to thrive, to create and promote our identity, our brand, leveraging our small town family values, our natural surroundings, our amenities and festivals, building this welcome home feel, how do we do it? Several ideas. One, that we charge the council to create an alliance of the major players in town, whether that's community service groups, the school district, businesses, the chamber, churches, whatever it might be, so that those who are doing those good things in town are regularly communicating with one another, building one another up, creating these very things, hometown values, building the surroundings, creating this welcome home feel. So that's the first thing, establish an alliance to do that. Secondly, an alliance is going to be useless unless there's good communication. And so the second thing is that you would develop this communication system, including a digital calendar, effectively promoting things, making that information available. Third thing then is if you've got a communication avenue, if you've got an alliance that's working, then create an events calendar so that all of these groups can know what's going on. They can help promote across the different groups of what's happening in town and encouraging people to be involved in as many things as possible. The fourth idea was that we would then create a system in town where we raise up our teenagers to be adults. That the businesses in town, community service groups in town would develop internships, opportunities for teenagers to work with those local businesses, whether it's a paid internship, a volunteer or internship, whatever that might be, and then have, much like a college fair at the high school, you'd have a job fair at the high school, letting all of our homeschool kids know as well so that they are being able to connect with our community and our businesses and to know, I may go off to college or technical school and get some training. This would be a great place to come back and work. Or to get those skills so that they can go and be successful in another place. Fifth idea was signage, that we want as people come in town to feel welcome, and so to have some big, simple signs that are pointing people to major areas and to activities, but then some smaller, more detailed signs for those that are walking, those that have the opportunity to read, that there would be a cohesive design behind all of these so that there is this unity around town. People would know, oh, that's an information sign, that's a Winnsboro sign that helps me get where I need to go or know what I need to know. Okay, Mike, thanks. Six, that there be a system of beautification days. We have a city cleanup every year already, but that we would develop that even more using the community's ministerial alliance, community service groups, so that it would be more than just bring things to City Hall and throw them away. It would become an opportunity for the city to unite, to repair houses, porches, to beautify, whatever it might be, that there would be a variety of those opportunities at least once a year, if not maybe multiple times a year. Seventh, because we live in a digital world, to promote digitally as many things as possible, what is going on, good things, and in that process to use our computer savvy folks in town, but particularly our young people who are digital natives, that computers just, everything digital clicks with them, to create some type of an online source where they could upload pictures from baseball games or from art shows or from any festival that they attend, so that those pictures are then available for any of our city employees who are building the digital presence to be able to pull those pictures in and to let people be involved. And then finally, to have promotional strategies, to take things like our online guide already and to build on that, but then also through our signage, through having promotional material everywhere to encourage businesses to use that welcome home theme. And to maybe in their business have welcome home t-shirts and have their business name on the back. And the churches could do the same thing, have welcome home and their church name on the back, that we create this promotional strategy within the community, that this is who we are. We want this to be a place where you can thrive. And so that's the first big idea, was to create and promote the city's identity and brand so that this is a place you can thrive. And then if you go to page 4, I believe, and that is this second big idea about governance and administration, that we want to be a people who can be trusted. Not only a place where you can thrive, but we are a people who can be trusted. And so we want to create transparent governance that upholds community values while engaging and leading the community to fulfill its mission, vision, and strategic plan. And so several ideas, and many of these you see, they start with the city council. And so those that are on council, that will be elected to council, there's much work that's going to be done over the next several years to make all of this happen. So there on page 4, you'll see that we want our city council and our city staff in particular, that those two groups that lead our city, to create an environment where people read what they need and phone when necessary. The idea was that we create such an efficient digital presence, city website, Facebook, whatever it might be, that people can find what they need, and then when they can't, they can call. They can say, hey, tell me a little more about this, where do I find this information? That we get an efficient process of making things available and transparent. Secondly, in order for that to be effective, we need to develop an educational plan where we could inform citizens, educate citizens about how the government is supposed to work, what the city council is to do, what the mayor is to do, what the city administrators to do, what city employees do, what they're responsible for, but what they're not responsible for, how taxes work, that money doesn't just grow on trees. That we would create this process of educating our people so they can learn, they can know, and they can take ownership in the city, and then all of these things we're talking about, that they could help the city thrive as well as become more and more trustworthy. Third, we have to create a program to accommodate citizens who don't have digital access. which would be not as many as there used to be, but obviously some who still don't have smartphones or internet access, and make that available to them. Fourth, and this might be the most important one, undergirding everything else, but the fourth idea was this, that the city council, this alliance of businesses and community groups, that every time they get ready to make a decision, that they would ask this question, is what we are doing, what we are planning, what we are promoting, supporting and or extending the mission, the vision, and the strategic plan? Is what we're doing good for Winsboro? And if so, why? And how does it fit in this idea of being a place to thrive, people to trust, programs that will transform, projects that will trigger economic growth? And then finally, to establish and execute this ongoing and proactive communication plan that regularly creates opportunities for dialogue outside normal official gatherings, that there would be town hall meetings, that there would be opportunities for people to have conversation, lots of question and answer, so that the more transparency, the more information that's available, the more the people can trust our council, our city, and the people that live here. Two big ideas, thriving and trusting. So Jan's going to come and talk about economics, triggering economic growth, and then Deanna will follow her and talk about transforming the good things that we have. Any questions while Jan's making her way up? I know that's a ton of stuff. We're going to hold questions to the end. Okay, so we'll hold questions to the end. By that time, you will have forgotten the questions you were going to ask me, so that's great. So no, jot those down. Jan, you come.
And all the amenities we want. We're told dream big. Nothing is, off the table. Let's just lay it all out there. And then our group, the economics and funding group, kind of got assigned the elephant in the room. How do you pay for all these great things here without creating an unnecessary burden to our businesses, to our families, to our neighbors, to our friends, all of those great things. And so that is sort of what we spent our day working on, and some of the things that we came up with. So our big bold step number 3 was using both creative and traditional financing options, obtain the necessary funding and resources to implement the city's mission, vision, and strategic plan. Basically, how are we going to trigger the economic growth and pay for all of these things? And so we had a lot of discussion and came up with 8 different areas and programs and all for us to look at for the feasibility of funding all of our vision and dreams and other things that happen there. Our first was to develop a proactive grants pursuit program. Obviously, free money is always the best money. So if there are grants out there, we want to know about them. And KSA Engineering, in collaboration with a couple of other entities, has developed what you're going to see as Exhibit A, and that is basically just a list of lots of grants that are available for funding various community and civic projects and other things along that way. And so that is something that we definitely want to continue with. Winsboro has had a great grant cycle this last year or 2 and previously, where we have been very blessed and fortunate with some great grant writers that have gotten us grants for helping fund some of the city streets, for the Arts Center, for Main Street, for several other projects and all. And so that is something we really want to stress going forward, is to continue to be very proactive in going after all of that free money that's out there. And I know nothing is ever free, but there are state and federal programs that are available to help communities like us, and somebody's going to get that money, so why not Winsboro? Why not use those funds to help trigger our economic growth? Our second, if grants are not available, and to be able to help augment some of those, study the feasibility of utilizing different loan alternatives. There are low-cost state loans, federal loans, private bank loans, and basically just using those for augmenting some of these projects and working the repayment of those into the city budget on an annual basis without a huge burden to folks there. Our third program that we looked at was utilizing all appropriate methods and kind of establishing a three-tier system, getting everybody involved. I know any of you that have attended a college sporting event or the theater in Dallas and other things, all of the buildings have corporate sponsors on them, and so Winsboro is blessed with several large corporations that call us home and have a branch here. Why not investigate what they have available for helping us, even some of our smaller local businesses. You look around the ballparks, you look in the gym, you're going to see sponsorship of scoreboards and other things. So using corporate sponsorship for some of that. The second tier of that would be individual giving, estate planning. Folks can leave funds to foundations and endowments that do things for the city. One great example here is our Gilbreth Memorial Library. We had a Carnegie Library for years and years that was through the Carnegie funds with libraries all over the United States. But the Gilbreth family left funds to Winsboro to establish us a new library. And so that's just an example of corporate giving, individual giving that benefited us and a great program and all here. Right south of us a few miles, you've probably all heard of the Meredith Foundation in Mineola and all of the funds that are available there. Think of the great work that that foundation does. And so the generous support of individuals can help us achieve some of these goals. And then lastly, in that one would be our nonprofit sponsorship, fundraising, and other things there. We've got lots of very active nonprofit organizations in Winsboro that do a lot of great things for our community. And just a couple of examples of some projects that were taken on by some local civic organizations, and I know there's lots more. The Pocket Park downtown that was sponsored by the Pilot Club. And if y'all all look just right across the street, the Rotary Club and the Winsboro Economic Development Corporation used nonprofit fundraising to support those projects in all of Winsboro. So there's some dollars that can be used to obtain some of our goals. The fourth item we looked at was leveraging private investors. The city really does not have the resources or the means, or I don't even know if it's legal, to get into housing and some of those kind of things, but Winsboro is an attractive place to be. And if you look around and see some of the activity that's going on downtown and just out the road from us, folks want to be here. And so coming up with ways to leverage private investors, which helps grow our tax base here and triggers our economic growth there. The fifth thing we looked at would be just a feasibility study. Sometimes bonds are a very viable way to pay for something now over the long term. All of us have, used financing, which was what a bond basically is over the long term, to buy a car, to buy a house, to buy a large item today that we can't just write the check for. So sometimes that is a very appropriate means to fund a large investment. Look at our beautiful new school that all of us are helping pay for through the bonds that they voted in just a few years ago. So sometimes that's an appropriate means. Let's see, our sixth was to look at the feasibility of a utility tax for streets. streets, road repairs was kind of a recurring theme throughout the poll and from the citizens. And there are neighboring towns that use some type of a utility fee, a utility tax on folks that are there, small amounts, but when you take the small amounts and put them all together, you have funds that are available, and then those would be earmarked for street repair, street projects, and that kind of thing. So just asking the mayor and the city administrator and the council to do some investigation there and look to see if that would be a feasible option to help fund some of the streets and projects there. Our seventh would be a sales tax reallocation. The city gets, I think is it 1.5 cents for every dollar of the 8.25 that sales tax is, and from that, 50% stays with the city and 50% of that goes to the WDC, which is used for advertising, incentives, and other things there. But looking at that was just an alternative. It wouldn't develop or generate any new funds, but possibly reallocating that split if there were some projects that it would be viable to use some of those funds for. And basically, whenever there's a large challenge in front of folks, and folks are like, I don't know where to begin, one of my famous questions to folks, usually after that, is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So if you look at number 8, if we have a selection guide matrix, that is basically just a resource and a tool where all of these ideas and goals and infrastructures and projects and amenities that we want to bring to Winnsboro, it may seem daunting. How are we going to pay for those all at once? But if you break them down and look at them individually, you can take those one bite at a time, just like eating the elephant, until we reach our goals and all of our vision comes to fruition there. So that's just a few of the things that our group talked about, which will hopefully help give some tools to the city and our city leadership and help us trigger economic growth here in Winnsboro. I think the next portion of the program, Ms. Deanna will handle.
Can you hear me now? Sorry, y'all, I'm gonna try to mute it for a second. It's so much easier without all that hair. Does that work? Can you hear me now? Okay. So I was lucky enough to get the amenities group. With our workshop for 2 days, we all broke into groups, as Councilman Columbus said in the beginning, and the amenities group, I think we had so much fun because we got to think big while they figured out how to pay for the big. So if you look in your guide on pages 8, 9, and 10, you will see some of the ideas that we came up with in the amenities group. There's a lot more there than the time I have to go through each item with you, but there's some really cool stuff. An example, bring your burro to the Boro. We have so many people that have donkeys in Winnsboro, and wouldn't it be fun to have an event called Bring Your Burro to the Boro. So anyway, that was just one fun idea. Plan and support the development of desired lifestyles, amenities, and infrastructure that will enhance our communities' quality of life for generations to come. That was our big, bold statement. And, you know, there's a lot to that. Over the next 20 years, hopefully I'll be around to see it, and I hope all of us are around to see it. Some of these things will be setting off into the future, And it will be things that our children and grandchildren will appreciate. But let's hope we're all here to see a lot of these. The first one, revitalizing the downtown with an emphasis on Market Street, Farmers Market, and the Cultural Arts Center. If you think about how amazing 2021 already is compared to 2020, we are constructing pavilions as we speak for the Farmers Market. You've all seen that as you go by. That's really cool, so that's in process. Repurposing Market Street, that's going to also be, starting now. By August, we'll all be doing something really cool there. Encouraging and providing incentives for the development of a hotel and motel gives folks a place to stay when they get here. So this is just an ongoing thing. We have a couple of really wonderful places to stay at B&Bs already. We want to see more growth over the next 20 years so folks have other places and options to stay. So that'll be ongoing. We gave it about a 5-year window. But of course, this strategic plan is for 20 years. So we think big. Encouraging developers to construct modest income housing to increase our population. When you're first moving to Winsboro, when we first moved here, we planned to build, but in the meantime, you need a place to put your stuff. So we put our stuff on the map. Greenville looked really close to Winsboro. So we put our stuff in a storage unit in Greenville, Texas, and moved to Winsboro. When we got here, we were like, wow, Greenville is a lot further away from Winsboro than it looked on the map. So now we repurchased so many things because we didn't want to go that far. But now our things are here in Winsboro. So encouraging developers to construct modest income housing allows people that get here to find maybe their starter home. The young kids getting out of school, your own kids, my 27-year-old, they could look at Winsboro and think, I could get a starter house here. And the piney woods are just so beautiful. So anyway, increasing the population increases our tax base, which in turn pays for all of the fun stuff on our amenities list. So later, like Brother David said, when you get home and you have a chance to meditate over this list, amenities is pages 8, 9, 10, and there are some great things that this tax base helps pay for. So moving right along. Considering the development of an infrastructure that replaces and repairs the feasibility study that prioritizes streets, water, and sewer facilities. We all know what Snoka did. We had water breaks, our water was just breaking all over town, the pipes underground couldn't handle the freeze. So by revitalizing our streets and water and facilities, this is just ongoing. We would like to think over the next 20 years that those issues will be much better for the future Winsboro folks than what we've been dealing with, because not only could we not get out and drive on our streets in ice, but the water was such an issue. So I think it was, working on the strategic plan and looking at the feedback from our citizens. Everyone commented about streets. Please fix our streets. But everything under the streets is aging out as well. So that's just something that, even though amenities is all about fun, we also realize that we need to plan for the future so that we can get to these fun events safely in our vehicles. Developing a parking lot in downtown to accommodate the expected high use. We've all been downtown. We know how tricky parking is. You park where you can and walk to the car show. We're lucky enough to live in the city, so we can walk right from where we live downtown. But a lot of folks are coming in, and we want to get more folks to come in, and they need a place to park. So the city has a vision to develop the parking and make it more conducive to folks coming here to visit and hopefully come here to say welcome home. And that is something that's going to also be ongoing. We had one building removed, and that is going to allow the design of a parking plan. So you've all seen that's already in progress, and hopefully that will help alleviate some of the issues with parking, especially when we have big events like the Arts and Wine Festival that brings in folks from all over, when the car show is here, you know, it's just obviously a need that we need a place for people to put their vehicle. Constructing trails throughout the community to increase connectivity between our residents, commercial areas, and parks. If you've traveled into other little towns that have these connective trails, it's really cool to be able to, like in Denton, you can get on a trail and ride the Denton Trail all the way basically to Dallas. It's called Rail and Trail, and it's really cool. So you can get on the trail, if you get tired on your bicycle, you hop on a train, you hang up your bike, you ride the train for a while, and then you get off and you ride some more. That's just one example of the importance of connectivity with a trail. You know, with a 20-year plan, who knows what cars will be like in 20 years, but trails, we're all going to still have a desire to ride our bikes, to walk a trail, to walk our children and our animals on trails. By having this as part of our amenities plan, we're giving it importance for the next 20 years because, you know, the children can ride these trails. We all want to be able to get from point A to point B and get around the city. And how nice would it be able to hop on a trail, whether you're on foot or on a bicycle, and go from here to the meat market across town without having to be, you know, in traffic. The children can hop on a trail and follow the signage from this school event across town to the library. You could go from the library on a trail all the way across town to City Hall, to the coffee truck, downtown. So basically, we set this as something really important. It's something that I think there's a trail grant available for. So when you're reading through the materials, when grants are given and awarded, they look at these things as, yes, this is really an important feature for this city. So that's a really cool thing. Developing a list and schedule for hosting local events to ensure high quality of life for residents and attract out-of-town guests. So I use the car show as an example because it's been going on for quite some time. Also, Autumn Trails. That's another big event. It's been going on for a very long time. It brings a lot of folks to Winsboro. It generates income. People want to eat. They want to stay somewhere. So, starting now with our new farmers market opening soon in April, and hopefully bringing folks in to see that and coming here for different events, that's going to generate income and tax base for some of the amenities that you'll be reading through on the list later today when you leave. It's just going to be an ongoing thing. It's, you know, something we'll all enjoy over the next 20 years. So I tried to move quickly so I wouldn't take too much more of your time, but our comprehensive plan from now, 2021 to 2041, is just really exciting, folks. Thank you. Come on, Hunter. And I'll turn this over to Hunter.
All right, can everyone hear me well? Good evening, my name is Hunter Rush with MHS Planning. We're partnered with KSA, we're working on the comprehensive plan itself, working through all those details. So we joined at the two-day strategic planning conference, went through all that. We've been coordinating with Randy and his team and the city to develop this plan. I will have you know a few things. This plan is currently in a draft form. We have not finalized it. We're probably about 50% complete at this point. So I'm just here to give you a quick update on it based on all of the public input we've heard and the strategic planning that we went through. So first, to let you know a little bit about what a comprehensive plan is, it's a guiding document, and as you can see, it's meant to better the community. It's meant to look into the future and help ensure that as time moves forward, there's better and better quality of life within the community. So that is a few of the guiding principles or policy decisions, and that's to help staff and elected officials make decisions in the future. Land use is one of the areas we'll focus on, which is, you know, the difference between industrial versus ag versus residential areas within the community. Infrastructure improvements, we've heard a lot about streets, water, sewer, those types of items. Education and housing, so the difference between technical schools versus primary, secondary, as well as single-family or multifamily within housing. And then lifestyle amenities, so parks, libraries, downtown, anything that the community can offer. So again, this is meant to be a guiding document with goals and objectives that help enhance the community as the future moves on. So real quick, I'm going to run through some of the highest priorities that we saw. Again, we polled the community, and as you can see, streets overwhelmingly was one of the highest needs from within the community. We also asked about the highest priorities based on amenities, and that is based on the impact the community would have. As you can see, your second item there is education. That was your highest impact. And following that, your top item is downtown, and your bottom two on your list are restaurants and retail. Those all ranked in about the same area, and as you can see, you know, with the revitalization of the downtown area and the farmers market, a lot of those boxes can get checked at one time. And then again, I'm going to run through. Stacy will come up and run through some of these a little later after me. But some of the projects we're currently working on: downtown revitalization and the farmers market. One of the things in the plan we want to talk through is the future land use. And land use plans, they're not to be confused with zoning, so we don't get into the very details of each and every parcel in each specific area within the community. It's a very broad look at the area and of the city limits and the ETJ. And it's done to promote desirable social and environmental use of the land. You know, it's really meant to look into the future, so you build efficiently as your community continues to grow. So the areas we're looking at are residential, commercial, urban mix, institutional, parks and open space, the hospitals, ag, industrial, and airport. And again, these are meant for general areas in the community. As you know, along main corridors is typically where you see more commercial areas, and typically you don't want to align a lot of industrial right next to residential. So we're going through and looking through the community to divide up the land as efficient as we can. And also an important aspect we went through is connectivity. So we've developed connectivity maps for efficiency through and mobility for moving throughout the community of accessing important nodes such as schools, retail areas, restaurants. And we encourage those to be pedestrian friendly, whether they're trails or sidewalks. And so basically what we do is we come in with a map and try to graphically show where we think future growth areas will be and how to connect to those specific areas.
I'm going to use the David Rose.
I'm going to use the David Rose method. That seemed to work pretty good. So just to sort of bring this part of it home and lead to the question and answer period, you know, this is, I've said to a lot of people, you know, that this is really more about the kids. As Kiana mentioned, this is a plan for the next 10 to 20 years. Some of us might like to think we might be around them, but you know, the reality is we might not, but the kids will, at least most of them. And so leaving your legacy is really what this is all about, your legacy of welcome home. And so what we try to do is, in putting all this together, you have all of your values that really provide the bedrock foundation for the community. You have the four major themes, the four major objectives: the amenities, the funding, the governance, the identity, and brand. These big, bold steps, all related to your mission of living and working and serving together to make Winnsboro the most welcoming place for visitors, businesses, and residents to call home. And then when we looked at the polling results, these were the things that seemed to come through in those qualitative statements. It wasn't all about just giving something a numerical grade. There was a lot of beautiful qualitative statements that were contained in those polls. And these are some of the most important things that came through. A lot of emphasis on family, of creating an environment that's supportive of families. A place, as we've said, to call home, that where people want to make their home here in Winnsboro. A place that's fun and has a lot of great activities for the family. a place where you can come to learn and be educated, a place that's vibrant, and a place at the same time that's very charming and attractive. This is what the strategic plan and the comprehensive plan is leading to and what it's all about, but it's your legacy. And so we want to give you every opportunity to make the best of that. And so at this point, when you think about the programs that were listed in the strategic plan, all of those programs eventually become projects. And those projects then get implemented in something that you see and touch and feel. And so at this time, I'd like to bring, before we bring Stacy up, we said we'd have a period of question and answer time just for this first segment. So what we'd like to do is just throw it open, and if you have a question you've written down or that's come to mind about the strategic or comprehensive planning process, please raise your hand. We'll call on you. Okay, there in the back.
I'm actually just visiting, but I love your town, and I came because of family. I'm curious. I found out about Winsboro because I was invited here. How does the rest of Texas and the rest of the country learn about Winsboro? It is a charming place to be.
Good question.
Yeah. That's a great question. And thank goodness that you came up with one of the major big bold steps being making sure that you continue to improve your identity and brand. And by improving your identity and brand, that's a big part of that is communication and getting the word out. So that's in the works. All right. Next question. All right. Yeah,
It's
Chris.
not so much a question, but as Pastor Rose mentioned, and we saw before here, the importance of family, the ability for our youth to take pride and ownership in the community by coming up with these programs, volunteering for internships in businesses or anything, and taking pride in your community is a big step, in my opinion, to keeping these people here, keeping the youth here for the future of Winsboro.
All right. Yes, sir.
Are the residents and part-time residents in our lakes communities considered as visitors or residents? How much have they been brought into this?
Well, I think that's probably a question for one of the leaders of the community to talk about more than a planner here. Chris, would you like to take on that
Yes, we
question?
looked at this, and as a matter of fact, we just had a meeting, and that's one of the big initiatives that we're going through, with the initiative that Judge Lucy Hebron has brought forth. And one of my questions was, how do we incorporate these people? But now they're starting a process now. What I understand is that the lake community, which is very important for the communities, not only Winsboro, economically around here, but to the best of my knowledge, they are not considered residents of the Winsboro area for voting purposes. Is true, Chair? Am I incorrect on this?
That's correct.
That is correct? Okay, Councilman Morris, correct? Make sure like this. But are they a vital part of our community? Absolutely. And that's what we're trying to do, is not only make it for the 3,414 estimated people that live in Winsboro, but for the surrounding community, which is probably more than double, including all the lakes. I don't know if that answers your question completely, or if you have a follow-up.
Just thinking about the required outreach to have their input for how they view Winsboro, and can we make it a center of their activity as well?
Chevron, the survey that we're doing right now through your office, will that help us do this?
I believe so, because in our opinion, a stakeholder is anyone that's here in Wood County, whether you're here full-time, part-time, whether you own a vacation home. Obviously, we want to solicit input from anyone that has a vested interest in our county. So I think it would incorporate your part-timers, even your visitors. It's important to know what people want this community to be in 20 years, and this is right in alignment with the Wood County's economic development commission's desire for a strategic plan for the whole county. So kudos to Winsboro for being the first city in Wood County to actually consider and take some important first steps in making that a reality.
Awesome.
Your input is extremely important to this community and its growth. Just because you don't live in the city limits doesn't mean that we don't want input from you. That's the truth right there.
Awesome, great question, yes ma'am.
I'm in real estate, calling for Lake Haven at Lake Cypress Springs. And you guys probably already know this, but so many of these weekenders come to Winsboro to eat and to participate in the activities here. I had someone just text me the other night, said they were at the Barrel House and they had heard something that was happening new in town and asked me what I knew about it. So the buzz is out there, and these lake people are coming out of the city to calm themselves down, to take refuge out here to a safe haven, and they love coming into our small towns. Now, Mount Vernon has given us a little competition, guys, and we all know that. So we've got to be ahead of the game and go forward.
Yes, ma'am. And I think we've all agreed with council on what the people that were here for the strategic planning conference, we'd like to see this also known as a culinary destination for people like this. We see that along with the arts. Winsboro Center for the Arts is a flagship organization that will bring people here. It will help all the other business kind of this domino effect. And we do want this very much.
Yes, sir.
I threw this out on Facebook just yesterday. In downtown Winsboro, in the next month is going to be Buffalo Bob's Steakhouse, the Celtic Table, there's Z's Main Street Eatery, and the Cypress Creek Brewery. On top of that is the Sinclair Market. That's more of a takeaway deli. That's 5 businesses, 5 in the next month that are opening up downtown. That's activity.
That's
That's
awesome.
how you create the buzz. Because you throw it out there and people are like, this is where we need to go. Right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Very good.
That's awesome. Yes, ma'am.
Back to the issue about the young people, I wonder if the council would consider having a 16 to 24 age range of people that might be elected to a youth advisory to the council.
Please, Councilman Morris can answer this.
I can answer that question. As a council member, I have suggested that for about 4 years now, maybe 6 years, and it just hasn't worked out with the WISD for a student to be on council, a non-voting student to be on council.
But maybe it doesn't
We are
have to be
still
a
working, we're still working on that, and we hope to get the youth more involved. With this election, there are more youth stepping up that are going to be voting. We are doing efforts to get the 18-year-olds registered to vote. And you'll see more of them out there voting.
Right. But there may be some people that are maybe even like 26, 27 and younger that wouldn't want to go out and try to be on the city council, but may be very interested enough to serve on an advisory council. You know, maybe not the high school kids, but maybe in that age range from 18 to 25, 26, something like that.
We do put out notices when we have openings on different boards, and unfortunately, we don't get a lot of applicants for those boards.
And we need to be more vocal about it.
I think so.
Put more out there, you know, really try harder, maybe.
We will.
Maybe those of us that are older try harder than the young ones. We will.
Yeah, this current city council is very interested in our youth serving and stepping up to the plate to be the future city councilmen, aldermen, mayors, planning and zoning, economic development corporation commissioners. We're very interested in that. So I challenge you as a citizen of Winsboro, someone that cares obviously about our community. If you know people, talk to them. It's just as simple as that. Thank you.
I just want to add real quick, I feel like we kind of spoke this into being. Joan and Dr. Rose were in the same group as I was, that talked all at length on involving the youth, in several different opportunities in town. And it wasn't 2 weeks later, we had not started any of this, and a 17-year-old from ISD approached me, came to me and asked if she could start shadowing me as the parks person. She plans to join the Parks and Recreation Board next month. That will be coming to council. So I feel like just all the good vibes spilled over and just happened. I wanted to give that good news there.
That's awesome.
And I understand that we did have a young person, I think he was about 20, that did come and put in his application for running for alderman for this election. Unfortunately, he didn't meet the residency timeline and didn't qualify. So maybe in next year, we will
Well, but,
again.
you know,
Again,
maybe
please.
next division for the advisory council that we
Right.
can start on.
This is awesome. This is where some incredible decisions, the seeds of which are planted that get made, and it's really encouraging to hear this. We're seeing this in other communities as well. We would also kind of point out, there's also, when you look at these action plans that are a part of your handout, there's opportunity for teams to work on various programs and various projects. And that doesn't mean it has to be reserved for just adults doing all the work there. There's going to be plenty of opportunities to engage young people and helping to be a part of implementing those action plans. So it can be a diverse group of people of all ages working on those plans. All right. Another question or two before we move to the third phase of our program tonight. All right, well, it seems like we're ready for you. Stacy, if you want to come on up here and talk a little bit about these project opportunities. And then we'll hand it off to Craig, who's going to talk a little bit about funding. I'll pass the baton here.
We're handling that like nitroglycerin.
Try not to rattle everybody. Can y'all hear me? Okay, hold them like this. Okay. So most of y'all probably know me originally as just the farmer's market girl, but stepping into the Parks and Recreation Director position just about a year and a half ago, really personally showed the importance of having a plan like this, a planning process like this. You know, if it was up to me, City Park would already be covered in one big farm with goats and chickens and beehives and the works. But then, you know, I had mama friends with toddlers that are going, you're going to get us a splash pad, right? I mean, from day one. And then my son, who's 15, if it was left to him, my only priority would be a skate park. So you obviously get different desires from every different voice that's coming to you as a leader. And you see this need for a plan that would, you know, be based on the desires of the community as a whole. So I just want to say I'm really excited to see us in this process and to see us getting all these really great ideas, a lot of great input that can be ready now to be put into action. We know that a plan, that's its purpose. If it sits on the shelf and it's something that our grandkids visit in a couple of years or 10 or 20 years, it hasn't really served its purpose. A plan needs to be put into action. So the presentation that I've created is looking at some of the action projects that we feel like will reach the goals that have been set by the community through all this polling process, through this strategic planning process. These are just some examples of ideas that we feel like can answer some of those goals, some of those desires, and be attainable now. But at the same time, we see a lot of the actions that we've already talked about, like involving youth, cleanup days, things like that can be very grassroots in their nature. And then there's the big bold steps that obviously have a price tag attached to those and figuring out how to accomplish those. So this is looking at some of those and the costs associated that we've been studying and getting estimates on to try to give you an idea of what it would take to do these projects. So guess what's first? Everybody's shocked. I don't think we had nearly any polling answers. You'll see I've sprinkled direct quotes from citizen surveys throughout the presentation. I don't think we had any of the polls, the surveys come back without mentioning streets. I actually office right out of this corner here, and so I drive Wheeler Drive almost daily, and I feel the pain of this one, I promise you. So, big bold step here. Streets are obviously always going to be ongoing. The repair there, they already are ongoing. Jan mentioned we already have pursued grants. We've been awarded grants, and we've fixed some streets. We are in pursuit of other grants, but it's always chipping away, you know, at a very, very large problem that's been here for generations, far long before the staff and the council that you have before you now. This has been an ongoing issue. So it's going to take a big step to resolve it. The price tag you see here, that's why this is a big step. It's a big one. If you look at the $751,000 portion of that, that would be to a proposed equipment purchase. Right now, we've got guys with shovels and cold pack asphalt. They're out filling potholes. That's what we are equipped to do. This would be looking at getting heavy machinery like rollers that would help us to do more of the repairs in-house, which saves you a ton of money no matter what you're doing. If you're building a park like we are at the library right now, the more that you can do yourself, you're obviously going to save a lot of money by utilizing your staff, training them to use our own equipment. That 751 also includes the road analysis. If y'all were at the council meeting where we had a presentation by engineer Abiel that shared with us a road analysis plan. They take a very scientific method throughout the city. They examine all of the streets and they come up with a plan based on prioritizing the things in most disrepair and then giving you a roadmap, so to speak, of how to go about what does this road need. Does it need completely redone? Can it be patched up? The different ways to do that and go about that. They have a very smart technological process to do that. So that includes that road analysis. The extra $1 million is just for materials. We can get this equipment, we can have a great analysis and know what we need to do. But if you don't have the asphalt and the things that you need to do it, we can get started right away. So to just present this as one big package, to be able to actually put boots on the ground and get started immediately on some of the major needs of the roads, this would be what would be associated with that. Moving on, yes, go ahead. I was going to say, what else is still up there? But it's just quotes talking about how badly we need road repair. We all know that, okay? So next is looking at a lot of the feedback that we obviously saw. You saw it in the graphs that it is very high priority, the downtown revitalization. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but this is the first project associated with that. I like this quote right in the middle that says, we have great downtown businesses that draw people into our community. We need to continue to capitalize on it. I noticed in one of Randy's slides that was part of, I think, the package here that talks about economic development, is to put that smart growth puts an emphasis on the existing assets you already have. If you're getting something right, continue on with that. Don't try to bring in something that reinvents the wheel and doesn't act as cohesive with the rest. I really feel like we're getting our downtown right. Like Rick pointed out, we've got businesses coming in constantly. We're already doing a lot of really, really good things there. And so this continuation idea of continuing to revitalize that downtown is big, and it's obviously a high priority of citizens, according to the polling, that everybody sees the emphasis that could be put there and the trigger effect that could come from that. So looking at this a little more in depth, there's already been $175,000 that Brenda pursued through a Texas Commissions of the Arts grant that has been awarded to Winsboro. That is a very big medal on our name right now. That's a really big accomplishment. That will be started any day now in putting efforts towards landscaping and other things on Market Street as we close that. The rest of this cost You're looking at the biggest is utility relocation. Getting all those wires underground is a lot of cost, a lot of work to get that done, as well as just creating a true corridor. It won't look like a street anymore. There's not going to be a curb. You want a nice cohesive walkway clearly across that street. But as well as tying into the alley that the city owns there that connects Main to Market Street. You've got all these great businesses going on each street, and it really creates a flow of those to have people linger and go from one street to the other and see all that there is to offer. That's that pedestrian-friendly feel that we're trying to accomplish with this project. This one is probably my favorite because it touches a lot of points. We're talking about this building right here. It's utilized for just everything. Y'all, there's quinceañeras out here several times a year. There's been a wedding or two since I've been out here. Obviously, meetings of every sort. This is an important building in our community. And really, what's great about it, you'll notice not a stereo price tag. It's got great bones. It just really needs a modernization. I think Councilwoman Morris was one of the ones that brought up when we were looking at budgets last year. Can we do something about those restrooms out there? And agreed. Any woman who's used the restrooms, and truly, it's little steps. It's new mirrors and faucets and toilet partitions, please, and things of that nature that would just give it a little facelift, give it a little modernizing. But there's some other elements here that we really feel like would be important too. When we look at the need for an emergency center, I think our winter storms, even our spring storms in the past with tornadoes and people being out of power for extended amounts of time, we'd really like to be able to answer a need for them with this building. We've got it, it's equipped. Other than it needs a generator. You know, if the whole city's out of power and you need a place for people, this could be that place. It's big enough, it's kind of the ideal place for that. As well as a commercial kitchen upgrade. That would obviously help a large group of people if we ever had that type of situation. But it's got a lot of other perks to it. I've been begging Craig for a commercial kitchen from day one, basically. I hate wasted anything, especially energy. So like, we're running the air in here and I'm officing in that corner and it's not being used. It makes me crazy. So, you know, a commercial kitchen is something that you can rent. It would be another means of revenue for the city. It can be used as a restaurant incubator. There are just so many different functions associated with that that would also, again, lend itself to that emergency type situation as well. Another council member, I believe, brought up the idea of utilizing this building as council chambers, this actually becoming the meeting place. You know, I think some of that was due to COVID and the idea of having a little more space, but also because it is so highly used for meetings of all sorts, to put in a professional audio visual system out here. We've all seen, we stream these city council meetings, EDC meetings, and everybody, you know, on Facebook is going, I can't hear them, what did she say? You know, it's just not, we're not set up to do that yet, we're not equipped, and so we could equip the city hall that we have now and the council chambers, but how much better to do it out here where that equipment could be utilized by every type of meeting that we have, big or small. And just really, but to me, that's just a need, a good way to project. Y'all like our fancy screen? Our guys built that. So just a little upgrade for that type of system. And lastly is the little stuff that I kind of started with, you know, interior, exterior painting, the bathrooms, but also a big one is the addition of an ADA restroom. These are old enough, they do not qualify. And we could actually tack that on an extra unisex bathroom that would be ADA compliant. Okay. I like this one. I don't know what it is. We obviously, I'm a little biased on this one. It's kind of my baby. But we did. It was so encouraging to see so much of the feedback from the polling that you know, was excited about the farmers market, and they really kind of solidified this idea. It's one of the things that we're very well known for. It's kind of one of the trademarks of Winnsboro, and that was really sweet for me to get to read some of those things. what I pointed out here, obviously, it's part of downtown. So when we talk about revitalization downtown, not only is it part of downtown, but now with the relocation, we've actually expanded the footprint of downtown. We really anticipate that Carnegie, where we've moved the market to, is gonna start to see a little more business and a little more life coming in over there, because it's gonna have activities and events going on, people coming and going over there all the time. So it's obviously connected when you read things about, downtown revitalization. We feel like the farmers market is absolutely part of that. It's in sync with all of that. But it's also got its own, little accolades. We averaged 400 people coming through every Saturday last year. And so that just tells you, and any business downtown will tell you. In fact, a lot of them on Market Street are going, why did you leave us? Because we really do bring a big influx. They don't just come to the farmers market. A lot of people drive from surrounding communities, come to the farmers market. They dine here while they're here. They shop in the retail shops while they're here. So it's good for foot traffic downtown. We also, just a little feather in our cap I had to go brag on, because again, I was shocked by this. They had a nationwide contest last year that was the most essential farmers market was the word they used with COVID. And we were voted second in Texas out of 850 some odd markets in Texas, behind Little Grapevine is the only ones that beat us out. So that was, again, it's like, well, we knew we were special, but we didn't know we were that special in everybody's eyes. So it just kind of, again, shows the importance of what we're doing, what we feel like we're getting right there. And then a big preaching point of mine, I think between the pandemic last year, our winter storms, even this year, you see empty grocery store shelves, and there's nothing like that to prove the importance of a local food system. Distribution channels are gonna get messed up sometimes, and you're gonna find their farmers when that happens. And we make that very easy, whether it's online in our off season or our seasonal Saturday markets. So again, the cost there is just what graciously EDC has contributed, the $100,000 that has constructed our pavilions. They are so close to being done. I promise you we'll be in them on opening day. And so that contribution has gotten us that far. But if you've seen the renderings, the rest of the plan is to create an event stage. Restrooms would be another set of public restrooms for downtown. Parking that is actually curbed out. Right now we're going to have kind of a rope barrier and impromptu. It would really finish out that lot, as well as create another green space like Market Street, which I didn't mention. Just a place that is really green and inviting amidst all these buildings and sidewalks. So that is the price associated with the rest of that lot. City Hall relocation. Most of you probably all know about the efforts that the city has already gone to reobtain this building, a piece of Winnsboro's history. It was where City Hall, all the city offices, the firehouse, all used to be housed. So it's exciting to have that back and to dream on bringing that back to life. Some of the quotes I really liked, talking about history from the citizen surveys, are Winnsboro needs to update and promote its history more. These type of locations will be forgotten in time unless our historic city wants to save its history. So again, this also, I feel like absolutely, it's kind of the cornerstone of the downtown. So when we talk about revitalizing the downtown, this is part of it. I mean, this is this beautiful building that just sits right there in the midst of it all. So bringing that back to life not only is addressing this, bringing some history to life, not letting it be forgotten, but it's also part of the downtown revitalization. Some of the things that are not noted on here, I gotta look at my notes. I'm gonna keep forgetting stuff. We do have a specialized architect who's been working with the city, meeting with the city, that really specializes in historic buildings like this and bringing them back to as close to the original as they can. Obviously, it's not going to be the firehouse, but there's even plans for some really cool ideas of like putting silhouettes of the fire doors, fire engines in the windows. I don't know how that works. Our construction guy would have to tell you, but just some cool ideas that would really pay homage to the original building. So that moves us right into police and fire and EMS in our current city hall. If you remove all those city offices and have those in this revitalized historic city hall, that would free up a lot of space for our police department, fire, EMS to expand and to modernize their facility if that was only for them. Obviously, this also is not a great big price tag because like the Civic Center, it's got good bones, it's a good old building, it's got a lot of wood paneling from, straight out of the 70s, 80s. It could just use some facelifts and modernization. And of course, the front of the building is not attractive. As a landscape kind of person, I'm going, we have to do something about this, but I don't even know where to start. So mostly you're talking about visual upgrades, things like that. But there's a lot of federal funding to be sought by police departments as well that could help them with the extra space to incorporate a lot of new technology, safe rooms, things like that could be really good assets for our PD. Christus, that is our EMS, has actually already committed $150,000 if this expansion were to happen. That would renovate and modernize their part of the facility, so that's a pretty exciting part of this. Parking, this was touched on a little bit earlier. I think Deanna mentioned this, that there's already a lot being looked at. Probably everybody knows about that as well, where the demolition, the purchase has already been done. So again, this is not a great big price to completely finish out a really nice parking lot there. Some things I wanted to point out there is that this would replace all of the spots that are lost with the closing of Market Street. There would be at least that many spaces in this new lot, so it kind of takes care of that. You see some quotes about really safe passage around the downtown area, this being on the same side of the highway as a lot of our shops and things like that would create a little safer route. Then we all know that walk across from the depot can be a little treacherous, so this helps address that as well. We also feel like that there's good opportunity for some funding from Tesla for EV charging stations, and that alone can make you a little bit of a destination for visitors that need to seek out that. So to start to wrap it all up, obviously these are steep price tags. When I say, this one's not so bad, but it's $500,000. These are big projects. These are big bold steps that do have those price tags attached to them. But I think you can't look at that alone without looking at it as an investment. These are and what are we investing in, and then take it a little further. What's our return on investment maybe possibly going to be? So to speak. And so one of the things that came out a whole lot in the polling was kind of talking about Sulphur Springs, kind of comparing Sulphur Springs and saying we need something a little more like what Sulphur Springs has done. And I think that's an easy draw for most people because they're our closest neighbor that has done recent, really revamping of their parks, but most especially of their downtown. That we've all kind of watched the progress and the process there. So that's an easy one for us to see the difference that has happened there. But on paper, to see it, we actually have them send over some of their numbers of their economic impact, and these are encouraging. That obviously we're not Sulphur Springs; it's not going to be exactly the same. If we were to do a big revitalization, it's not guaranteed to do what theirs has done. But if you look at percentages, it can be encouraging that you make these investments, and a lot of times that's going to come right back and impact you in a positive way. So I know these are pretty small on the screen. They had a 71% increase in total taxable value of property downtown in the development district. Over 12 years, it went from 14.1 to 24.2 million. 61,642 increase in sales tax in the downtown over a 5-year period from 2013 to 18. Their overall sales tax revenue had a 60% increase from 2.7 million in 07 to 4.6 million by 19, and a 400% increase in mixed beverage tax from 07 to 18. They also added 3 hotels and over the course of 3 years, and now it brought their hotel occupancy tax up 101%. So that's just you know, a little snapshot again of a neighbor that gets brought up a lot, and the kind of impact that that can have by making some of these investments. To explain the title of this last slide, that a downtown is a pulse point. You see that a lot of these projects are tied to the downtown, not only because the polling obviously showed, you know, that there's a need for that revitalization. I think people see that there's going to be an impact from that revitalization. But, you know, to me, you know, if you want to check your health, if you want to go, am I working out hard enough? You know, where do you go to? You know, kind of this deal. You want to check the health of a town. Where do you go? Where does somebody, when they're visiting, come and say, okay, is this town really healthy? I feel like that is your downtown, that they're going to look there first, and that's going to gauge whether they think, okay, this is a thriving town or it's not. So to just dream with me for a minute, that you picture an investor coming in and he's wanting to bring industry to East Texas. And he meets with the mayor on the second story of the revived old historic city hall, right? And they're looking out over, you know, new restaurants and retail and Sinclair Market and green spaces that are now Market Street and the farmer's market. And what does he see? You know, people are coming and going. It's this bustling little city town center. This town is alive. It's giving him the pulse, you know, going, this is a good place to invest. This is a good place to bring my business because this is obviously a healthy town based off of what he sees in that downtown. So all those, again, to encourage the idea of don't be so scared by some of these projects that we feel like answer some of the needs. They're just some ideas there. So to close this completely out, I think I have one more slide. We have a plan. Now what, right? We have a plan, we have a viable action projects that stem from that plan, and they reflect the priorities that have come out of the polling and the plan. How do we pay for it all? So here's where that's way above my pay grade. I'm going to hand y'all off to Craig Cunningham. He is I want to call him our professional numbers guy, but I believe financial advisor is the correct term.
Thank you. Thank you, Stacy. Before I get started, I want to acknowledge Randy and Houston, and Emily, Lenny, and now Stacy after her. Let's just stop and give them a round of applause for everything they've done. They get to be the visionaries of this, as well they should, as well as the community has been during the strategic planning and comprehensive planning sessions that you've been through. It's going to end up being a plan for the future. So I want to start off by introducing myself. I am Craig Cunningham. I've been the financial advisor to the city for a few years now. I recently completed a refinancing of some city debt at the end of last year that generated about 8% of savings over the remaining life of that debt. So we got off to a good start. And so I've been asked to come here today and talk about a plan of finance that we've developed to implement some of these projects that we've discussed tonight. The words used earlier by Jan, I think, and some others were triggering and transforming are two of our points. So triggering is getting started. What are we going to do to help transform the city? So I'm here to talk about a couple of those things. And most notably, economic development sometimes gets confused. Cities promote economic development and they facilitate economic development, but true economic development comes from when people move here, when companies come here, when people come here to live and work. But it's the city's responsibility to provide both public health and safety for people when they come to their community, to do that, and to provide amenities for those people once they're here. And we just heard this gentleman talk about a number of new restaurants coming to town. Now people that come to your wine festival and to the other things can now stick around longer, spend more of their money while they're here on food and beverage, I wanted to look at that 400% increase in liquor tax and sulfur. I thought that was interesting. I wonder what that looked like over the pandemic year, if that doubled to 800 or not, but a whole nother conversation. So in any event, I'm glad to be here. First thing I want to look at is the list of improvements. We just went over them. I just want to quickly go back and list those things again. We talked about street maintenance, City Hall relocation, Market Street improvements, police, fire, EMS, farmers market, civic center, and parking. And the total cost of that right now, at the estimates that we developed, is $5.8 million, and that's net of about $425,000 of grants and other benefits that Stacy pointed out when she did hers. $175 for Market Street, $150 for police, fire, and EMS, another $100 for farmers market. So the city's doing what it should be doing by going out, getting grant writers, doing the types of things they need to help fill in some of those gaps. So again, another thing I'd make, again, these are public health and safety initiatives, and these are lifestyle and amenity initiatives. So they all fit in with those things and those things that have been identified by the citizens through this process. So how are we going to finance these things? Certainly there are things that can be financed differently, but probably the most common thing used by local governments in Texas is an obligation called a certificate of obligation, or a CO. I may use the word CO just to make my presentation a little shorter. I also may use the word bond. This is a form of bond. It's a form of long-term borrowing. It was initially authorized in 1971 by the Texas legislature, provides local governments with an important financing tool, doesn't require an election unless 5% of the voters within the jurisdiction petition for an election. So I'm hoping, because of the large amount of community involvement in this, that we would have that challenge, but that's a way for people to challenge this should they choose to do so. Now, any local governments that want to use this type of financing must publish notice of this, their intent to do this, at least 45 days ahead of the time that the council will act on the actual issuance of any bonds. So, I believe it's the city's intent in April to bring an ordinance before the city council that would authorize publication of a notice of intent of the city's desire to issue certificates of obligation to fund the projects we just went over. In that notice will be a description of the projects and how we intend to pay them back. So, moving along to the next slide. What can COs, what can the proceeds of these borrowings be used for? They can be used for construction and restoration of structures, purchases of materials and supplies, purchase of equipment, machinery, buildings or land, and then professional services, architects, engineers, myself, lawyers, others that participate. Each one of these things clearly fits in the profile of what was discussed as the intended uses of these proceeds by Stacy a moment ago. All right? The next page has an estimated what we call sources and uses of funds. So we start at the top. It may be difficult for you to see, but it says par amount of bonds would be equal to a little more than $6 million, $6,080,000. We would use those proceeds, and I've listed all the projects below there. I did combine the City Hall and Civic Center into one item, but these projects all add up to that with the projects we just looked at. In addition to that, we have what are called cost of issuance. That's the cost necessary to issue the bonds, among other things. Attorney General fee that gives an opinion on the bonds that they're incontestable. Bond counsel who works for the city who renders an opinion that the interest on those bonds is tax exempt for the people that buy them. The rating agency who rates those bonds. Currently, the city has an A+ credit rating. That's a very strong credit rating that would generate a very low interest cost for any borrowing. My fee is involved in that. The fee of the underwriter that goes out and sells ones. Those are the cost of issuance. Those typically fall in this range that you see here. So we would propose to issue a little over $6 million of bonds to fund all of these projects. I believe, and I'm not certain, but I want to say that every project that we saw listed there can be completed probably within a 24-month cycle. Is that correct, Jacob? Is that roughly the time span on most of our projects?
Everything but median fire. We have to relocate the city hall staff in order to renovate existing.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for that correction. So I make that observation because we want to borrow money. We want to go out and use it as fast as we can. We don't want it sitting around there while we wait to do something. In this case, we'll have a small portion of it, but some of that can even be used to order equipment and other things while we're waiting to do the final completion. So that's our sources and uses of funds. The next page has an estimated debt service schedule. So right now, under current market conditions, we would expect to sell bonds at around a 2.8%. And that would be over a 25-year period. We borrow money for 25 years, tax exempt, about 2.8%. Maybe a little less if market cooperates with us. We have an estimated bond rating at AA. That's because I would recommend that we would get the bonds insured. That would get us a little lower interest rate. So that talks a little bit about the cost of the borrowing. But I wanted you to see the estimated debt service schedule for a couple of things. One, you'll note that there's no principal reduction in the first 10 years. So we'll be paying interest only during the first 10 years and then amortizing the principal over the remaining 15-year balance. Well, why are we doing that, Craig? Well, there are a couple of things that work here. One is just the overall management of the city's debt structure. So we want to try and minimize the impact to not only the community, but to the city as they plan. So this allows us to amortize off some other obligations that the city presently has on their balance sheet while just paying interest on these. Secondly, and probably more importantly, is this is a catalyst for future growth. As we've heard a lot today, we do these projects in the next 24 months. That leaves us about 8 years to continue to drive development into the community. New homeowners, new businesses coming to the community. What does that do? That grows your tax base. That lessens the tax burden and other burdens on the community as the tax base grows. Also brings visitors to your community who then spend money in your restaurants and your retail establishments. Grows your sales tax base. So I mentioned that because that's why we set it up. It's set up to help facilitate not only management of city debt, but also to accommodate the future growth that we expect. So that's how we would expect to finance these initial projects that have been identified through this community activity and surveys and all the work done by KSA and MHS. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Questions for Craig?
Yes, ma'am.
Has in the past Windsor ever done this for a CO?
Yes, ma'am, they have.
And when was that?
They did some in connection with the issuance of some improvements to the water and sewer system. COs are used frequently to fund water and sewer improvements as well as other public improvements, yes.
So what's outstanding on that?
Let me see. Let me put my glasses back on here. Just going to quickly go over the obligations that are outstanding right now from the city. Has combination tax and revenue certificate of obligation that was issued in 2005 that matures in 2026. They have a GO refunding bond that we just refinanced, so that's no longer outstanding now. There was a tax and revenue CO done in 2015 that was also for some utility improvements, and then a GO refunding bond that we just issued to refinance the 2011. So you've got 2 issues of COs and 1 issue of GO refunding bonds outstanding. Oh, how much total debt? I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. 0.8. Right now, about, my writing's very small, about 6.3 million, plus or minus. Any other questions?
And 2026 is the earliest or late that last date that all of those will be paid off?
The last date of the Series 2015 looks like it's 2033.
Okay, so on this, the current CO bond, nothing is paid toward the principal for the first 10 years?
That's the way it's structured right now. We haven't completely settled on that. But one of the reasons, again, we put it is because with all the other debt that you have outstanding that's going to be rolling off, we're pushing out the principal on this so we can pay down a couple of those other items before we start amortizing the principal. All of these assets we're financing here, with maybe the exception of the equipment for street improvements, are all long average life assets. They all have average lives of over 20 years.
As a council member, do we have access to the documents there that you presented?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. I was meant to bring up that all of the presentation slides from tonight, I believe, will be posted to the city's website. So you all have access to it.
Thank you.
Yes. It's all right.
Okay, so the one by this is estimated at 2.8%.
Yes.
With the fluctuation of time, especially as we're seeing today, that could possibly also rise.
That's correct.
So will that be a fixed amount?
Once we sell bonds, yes, it will be fixed. That's correct. But we cannot sell bonds until after we publish notice, waited our 45 days, then we sell bonds, so at least 45 days. Now, for the purposes of tonight's meeting, I built an inflation adjustment into that number, so I'm hoping that by the time we get there, that we'll still be at 2.8 or less. But if anybody watches the markets lately, they've known the 10-year Treasury rate's gone up 25 basis points in about the last 2 weeks. Now, it's settled in there, and it seems to have found a new trading range at about a 175, and municipal bond rates don't always trail federal taxable rates. So municipal rates are still a little lower than what the increases that have occurred in the taxable sector. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So let me, I'm trying to get this in my head here. So you said the other would be paid off in 2036. 33, okay. So we're roughly gonna have a debt of $12 million.
Pardon me?
I said, so roughly, if you started in September, like this says, for the next, until 2033, we will have a debt of $12 million.
Well, it won't be 12 because all the other issues that I mentioned are amortizing principal every year. So initially, right when we issue them, they'll be 12, it'll be about 12 million because we're going to add 6 to it. But while we're paying interest only on ours, all those other issues are paying down their principal. That was the idea, is we wanted to give as much relief to get those old obligations paid off, principal and interest, before we started amortizing these. Again, these are just estimates that we're in structures we're basing all of these things on now. clearly work with the council flexible. We can amortize it over 30. The only difference is it's gonna raise that 167 to something larger than that. So, yes?
So currently, what is in the budget, the city budget, to pay back these loans? How much is budgeted each year?
Oh, I'd have to defer to the finance director who's not here tonight, so, but I can provide some of that information. I've got, what I have in front of me and what you don't see is a list of every city's bond issue and when they pay off. So I can see where this is, and so what I've done and what I work with the city on is you've got a lot of debt that's coming due the next 10 years. Let's push interest only out here. Let's focus on getting those older, more expensive bonds paid off and let these 2.8%ers ride for a little while. Does that make sense?
In some ways, yes, in other ways, no. I do account.
I think what she's getting at, we work together, so. I think what she's getting at is there room in the budget now to pay this $167,000?
I would have to again defer to Sandy on it, because again,
Cut somewhere else and raise the taxes and.
COs can be paid from property taxes, sales taxes, utility fund revenue, any source of money that the city has available.
I get that, yeah.
Okay, so yes, there will be a property tax levy associated with this bond, at least initially.
How much?
Whatever we end up selling the bonds at, right now it's projected to be about 8 cents on the INS levy. So for an average price home, and I think according to the information you guys gave, was about $85,500 is the average home in Winsboro. Let me look at my notes here.
Let's go at 100,000.
No.
I don't know that I have that math problem done here, but for the first 10 years for a family that had an $85,000 home and $25,000 of exemptions, homestead, others, or a taxable assessed value, which you're getting taxed on, of $60,500, their taxes would go up about $50 a year, $4 a month, or 14 cents a day, if we levied a tax for 100% of the 167,000 on the current tax base.
Okay, so that brings up another question. So you're basing that on a home of 850,000, and I have to say before that most people in this city does not have a home even worth half that much.
You said 85 now.
85,000.
Yeah, good point.
Did I say 850,000? Oh, okay. Whew.
Wow.
Boy, if you had 850, your tax base would be way up there. No, I'm sorry. If I said that, I didn't.
I'm not gonna move in your neighborhood.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
No, that's okay.
He wasn't matching up in the head.
You know, I'm going to leave you with this because those were great questions, by the way, and I'll get right to you in a second. A lot of my estimates now are on a static environment. I am running all my numbers based on your tax base that was certified last year. Okay? Your tax base has averaged almost 4.5% growth, or 3.5% growth over the last 20 years, every year. More importantly, the last 5 years, it's really grown. So you've got to grow some more. And as you grow, that spreads that burden across a lot more people. And as you attract more people to your community and they pay more sales tax, that helps offset that by using some of that sales tax revenue in place of property tax revenue. That's more of a city budgeting and planning function that I don't get involved in. But the beauty of this obligation is it allows you the flexibility to pay it from different sources. Yes?
Couple things. Sometimes as a taxpayer, it's hard not to just look at, oh my gosh, we're having a tax increase. Until you look at it annually, $50 a year, you know, we drink coffee that much. So to me, that is a non-issue. But the question I have to do is, based on your experience, is now a good time, based on interest rates, to do something like this?
Yes, it is. Excuse me, I'm a little dry. Yes, it is. We've had historically low interest rates for, golly, at least 3 years now. And even though we've had these recent run-ups, if you look at where the rates are, the 30-year municipal bond rate, maturity rate, if you're going to sell just one 30-year bond out there for a AAA issuer, is 1.8%. Now, we pay more because we're A+ rated issuer, not AAA. But my point is, it's still very, very low. If you looked at the tax-exempt yield curve, it starts at 0.2 for a 1-year maturity and rolls to 1.78 in 30 years. So for 30 years, there's just a very small spread, and we're talking actually about borrowing money for a shorter period of time than that. So to answer your question, yes, I believe it's a good time to borrow money. Yes.
Okay, and I have to beg to differ on her statement. In this city, $50 for coffee does mean a lot to a lot of people. They cannot afford that. This city, this town and city, is a lot of low-income families. So $50 might not mean much to me or you. It could be the difference of, do I eat this week? So, you've got to take that into consideration with the citizens. You can't just count on part of them. You have to take everybody into consideration. And then my actual question is, okay, let's say we don't know what the future brings. We only know. So what happens if the city cannot make the requirements of these cities for the $12 million? At that point, does the city go bankrupt? What would happen?
No, the city would not go bankrupt. First of all, the city has in each of the agreements that they've made to borrow money, has pledged that they will levy a property tax to pay off every dime of debt that the city has. If utility revenues are insufficient, if sales tax revenues are insufficient, or user fees or any other source of revenue the city has is insufficient to pay all their debt, they have pledged to levy a property tax to repay that. And that is true for every city in the state of Texas. They issue certificates of obligation backstopped with a property tax so an investor can force the city to levy a tax to pay them back if necessary. In my career, I've never seen a city get a writ of mandamus against them enforcing the tax. That's just not good business. They figure out other ways to make their payments. As you indicated earlier, lowering services. You're willing as a public citizen to lower services, you'll have to agree on what am I going to pay less for so I can have some other things. Those are decisions made by communities. But to answer your question, the city would levy tax to pay off all their debt. Or they would raise your water and sewer rates sufficient to pay off all their debt. It's just a matter of where you go to pay it. And those things are all, those things are all political decisions and things that, policy decisions made by each city. Questions? Great questions. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, I think this is a very productive meeting. A lot of good information, a lot of good questions were brought out. Transparency is the key to this whole situation, this whole project. Everybody needs to know what page we're on, be on the same page. Good questions about financing. We need to know these type of things. Are we going to get nailed? Good things on how we're developing the city. Tax revenues, amenities, quality of life. You have to throw that in there, quality of life. If we don't have a good quality of life, why would anybody come here? Why would they want to live here? It's just that simple. We've seen towns around us and all throughout the state that are just so-so, they're stalemated. It just looks like they're never going anywhere. Sometimes we just have to step up, bite the bullet, as they say, and do what's good for the citizens of this community, all citizens of this community. And that's a good point. And Emily, what time do I have here?
7:26.
Okay, and I'd like to close this meeting at that time. Thank you very much, and we appreciate everybody's participation.